The color of regret. The hydrangeas are blooming again. Every June they return, faithful as the tide, their blue heads nodding in the garden I've tended for 20 years now. Blue was always your color. Not the washed-out denim blue that everyone wears, but that deep, impossible blue that catches in your throat when you look at the ocean on a clear day. I wonder if you still wear blue shirts. It's been 27 years since I last saw you, Thomas. 27 summers of hydrangeas, of wondering what might have been if I'd made a different choice that autumn in 1998. Sometimes, especially on mornings like this, coffee in hand, watching the neighborhood stir to life from my front porch. The weight of that choice sits heavy on my chest. Not all the time, not anymore, but enough to remind me that some decisions ripple through your life forever. They say that grief is the price we pay for love. But what about regret? What's the price of a path not taken? I was 28 when we met. You were 32 and new to the newspaper's design department. I remember how you stood in the doorway of the conference room on your first day, tall and slightly awkward, with those wire-rimmed glasses that kept sliding down your nose. I was in the middle of pitching a story about local businesses struggling against the new big-box store on the edge of town. You sat quietly in the back, but when everyone else left, you stayed. That was really good, you said, and then blushed so hard I could see it creep above your beard. I mean, the way you talked about the community impact. It wasn't just about economics. Thanks, I said, gathering my notes. I'm Lisa. Thomas, you replied, and I remember thinking your hands were surprisingly soft for someone so tall. We became friends first, which I've always thought was the purest foundation for love. Lunch breaks spent comparing childhood stories. You grew up in Vermont, in a house that backed onto woods where you'd play until your mother rang a bell for dinner. I told you about growing up in Arizona, about the heat that felt like a physical presence, and how I'd never seen snow until college. We shared books. You introduced me to Raymond Carver, and I made you read Joan Didion. We argued about movies. You loved the classics, anything in black and white. I preferred stories with complicated women who didn't always make the right choices. 3 months after we met, we stayed late at the office, finishing the layout for a special weekend edition. Everyone else had gone home. The cleaning crew had come and gone. It was just us under the fluorescent lights, surrounded by the hum of computers. What are we doing here, Lisa? You asked suddenly. I looked up from my screen. Working too late on a Friday? No, you said, turning your chair to face me fully. What are we doing? Because I think about you all the time, and I'm pretty sure friends don't think about each other the way I think about you. I remember the silence that followed, how it seemed to expand to fill every corner of that room. I remember the way my heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird seeking flight. I think about you too, I finally admitted, and the relief on your face was like watching the sun break through clouds. Summer turned to fall, and I fell into you like a stone into still water. You lived in a small apartment with tall windows and bookshelves that reached the ceiling. I lived in a craftsman-style house I'd bought the year before, determined to put down roots after years of movement. We spent weekends refinishing the hardwood floors, painting the kitchen a buttery yellow, planting the garden. You wanted hydrangeas because they reminded you of your grandmother's house. I wanted roses for their stubborn beauty. We compromised. We got both. I could live here, you said one evening, your arms around me as we stood on the porch, watching lightning bugs rise from the newly trimmed lawn. With you, I mean. I'd like that, I said, and meant it with every cell in my body. We made plans. You would move in after your lease ended in November. We talked about maybe getting a dog. You wanted a big, goofy retriever. I was partial to terriers, small and fierce. We'll get both, you laughed. Eventually. Eventually. Such a promising word. The call came on a Tuesday in October. The Seattle Times wanted me for an interview. It was for the position of investigative editor. My dream job, the one I'd been working toward since journalism school. The job I'd almost given up hoping for. You have to go, you said that night, excitement bright in your eyes. This is what you've always wanted. But we just found this, I gestured around us, at the half-painted kitchen, at the life we were building. I don't want to leave. It's just an interview, you said reasonably. And if they offer it to you, we'll figure it out. Seattle's not the moon. So I went. And they offered me the job on the spot. We need someone to start in 2 weeks, the editor-in-chief told me. The current editor had a health scare. She's fine, but she's moving to Arizona to be with her daughter. 2 weeks. Not enough time to figure out a long-distance plan. Not enough time for you to look for jobs in Seattle. Not enough time for anything but a rushed decision. I called you from my hotel room, looking out at a city shrouded in the gray mist that I would eventually come to find beautiful. They want me to start right away, I said, my voice tight with conflict. There was a long pause on your end. What do you want to do? I want both, I said, and my voice cracked a little. I want the job and I want our life. Maybe we can do long distance for a while, you suggested, but I could hear the doubt in your voice. We both had careers that demanded long hours. We both knew the statistics on long-distance relationships, especially new ones. Maybe, I echoed, but we both knew what was happening. I took the job. You helped me pack up my half of our shared belongings on a cold November weekend. We promised to call, to visit, to try. And we did, for a while. But newspaper hours are brutal, and the 3-hour time difference meant one of us was always either just waking up or about to go to sleep. The visits became less frequent. The calls shorter. The space between us grew like a living thing, fed by distance and diverging lives. 6 months after I moved, you called to tell me you'd been offered a position at a magazine in New York. That's amazing, I said, genuinely happy for you. You've always wanted to work in magazines. I have, you agreed. Lisa, I think maybe we should stop pretending this is working. The hurt was sharp and clean, like a paper cut. Is that what we're doing? Pretending? I don't know what else to call it, you said gently. We're both building lives that don't include each other. You were right, of course. That was the thing about you, Thomas. You always saw the truth more clearly than I did. I fought it anyway. We could try harder, I insisted. I could look for jobs in New York. Would you really want to leave Seattle now? You're doing such important work there. I was. I'd broken a story about housing discrimination that had led to policy changes. I had a team that respected me, friends who understood the demands of the job. No, I admitted. I wouldn't. And I don't want you to, you said. That's the problem. I want you to be happy more than I want you with me. And I think you feel the same way. I did. That's what made it so heart-wrenching. We loved each other enough to let go. Life moved on. I built a career I was proud of. Eventually, I met David, a kind man who taught high school history and coached the debate team. We married when I was 35, had our son, Jack, a year later. David understood my dedication to the paper, just as I understood his passionate commitment to his students. We built a good life, a comfortable life. But sometimes, especially in June when the hydrangeas bloomed, I would find myself wondering about you. I heard pieces of your life through mutual friends. You married a photographer named Claire. You had twin daughters. You became an executive editor at the magazine, then moved to a publishing house. Your first book, a memoir about growing up in Vermont, received critical acclaim. I bought it, of course. Read it in one sitting on a rainy Seattle Sunday while David took Jack to a baseball game. Your voice was so clear on the page, so familiar, that it made my chest ache with remembered affection. There was a chapter about your grandmother, about her garden and her wisdom. You mentioned hydrangeas, and I wondered if you remembered planting them with me. The years blurred together, as they tend to do when you're raising a child and building a career. Jack grew up, went to college, fell in love with a girl who studied marine biology. David and I settled into the comfortable rhythms of a long marriage, not always passionate, but steady and true. And then, 3 years ago, David died. A heart attack while running, quick and unexpected. The grief was a physical thing, a heaviness that made even the simplest tasks, making coffee, answering emails, seem insurmountable. Jack moved back home for a while, and we navigated our shared loss together. 6 months after David died, I retired from the paper. 40 years in journalism, 25 at the same publication. They gave me a party and a plaque and many kind words about my contribution to the field. I smiled and thanked everyone and felt oddly hollow. What do you do with the second half of your life when the first half has been so consumed by work and family? I traveled a bit. Volunteered teaching journalism at a community center. Started writing the book I'd always talked about. But there was a restlessness in me, a sense of unfinished business. Last September, I attended a journalism conference in Boston. I hadn't planned to go, but a former colleague asked me to accept an award on her behalf, as she was on assignment overseas. It was a quick trip. Fly in Friday, award dinner Saturday, fly out Sunday. The conference was held at one of those grand old hotels with chandeliers and deep carpets that muffle your footsteps. I was at the registration desk, collecting my name badge, when I heard someone say, "Lisa? Lisa Harrington?" I knew your voice before I turned around. Older, slightly rougher, but unmistakably yours. There you were, Thomas, standing in the hotel lobby in a blue shirt, still your color, with your silver hair and the same wire-rimmed glasses, now more fashionable than they'd been in the 90s. You looked good. Different, of course, we were both in our 50s now. But essentially the same. Thomas, I said, and my voice sounded strange to my own ears. What are you doing here? You smiled, and I saw the crinkles around your eyes deepen. Speaking on a panel about the transition from print to digital. You. Accepting an award for a friend. I paused, suddenly aware of how my heart was racing. It's been a long time. 25 years, you said without hesitation, and I realized you'd kept count too. We had coffee in the hotel lounge, surrounded by other conference attendees who had no idea they were witnessing a reunion decades in the making. You told me about your life. The success of your books, your daughters both in college now, your recent divorce. Claire and I grew apart, you explained with the simple dignity I remembered so well. No drama, no betrayal. Just two people who wanted different things from the second half of life. I told you about my career, about Jack and his fiancée, about losing David. I'm so sorry, you said, and covered my hand with yours briefly. Your touch was like a current, awakening something long dormant. How long are you in town? You asked as our coffee cups emptied. Just the weekend. You nodded, and I saw the calculation in your eyes. The same one happening in mine. How much time do we have? What does it mean? Where could this go? Have dinner with me tonight, you said, and it wasn't quite a question. I should have said no. Should have kept the past in the past. Should have honored my life with David, even though he was gone. Instead, I said yes. We ate at a small Italian restaurant a few blocks from the hotel. The kind of place with candles in wine bottles and red-checked tablecloths. We shared a bottle of Chianti and talked for hours. About our careers, our children, the books we'd read, the places we'd traveled. About the years between then and now. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed? I asked as we waited for dessert. The wine had made me brave, or perhaps foolish. You looked at me for a long moment, your eyes serious behind your glasses. Only about once a week for the past 25 years. The honesty of it caught me off guard. I'd expected you to say something polite, something that would allow us both to pretend that what we'd had wasn't as significant as it had felt. But there you were, as straightforward as ever. Me too, I admitted. But I don't regret my life, Thomas. I loved David. I'm proud of what I've done. Of course, you said immediately. As you should be. I don't regret my life either. My daughters are the best thing that ever happened to me. And I've been lucky in my career. You took a sip of wine, then added, but that doesn't mean I don't sometimes think about that fork in the road. About you. After dinner, you walked me back to the hotel. The night was cool, stars visible despite the city lights. We stood outside the entrance, that awkward moment of saying goodnight tinged with decades of history. My panel is at 10 tomorrow, you said. Maybe we could have lunch after? I nodded, suddenly shy. I'd like that. You leaned down and kissed my cheek, a gesture so gentle it almost undid me. Good night, Lisa. I watched you walk away, a tall figure in a blue coat, and felt something unfurl in my chest. Not quite hope, not quite regret, but something in between. We had lunch the next day, and dinner again that night. We walked along the harbor, talking about everything and nothing. You showed me pictures of your daughters. Beautiful girls with your height and thoughtful eyes. I showed you pictures of Jack and his fiancée, of the garden I still tended, of the view from my home office where I was writing my book. What's it about, you asked. Your book. Women in journalism, I said. The ones who changed the field and the price they paid for it. You nodded, understanding immediately. The choices they had to make. Yes, I agreed. The impossible choices. On my last night in Boston, we sat in the hotel bar until it closed. Neither of us wanted the weekend to end, but we were both due back to our respective lives the next day. I'll be in Seattle next month, you said as we finally made our way to the elevator. For a book signing. Maybe we could have dinner? The doors slid open, and we stepped inside. I pressed the button for my floor. 7. You were on 9. I'd like that, I said, watching the numbers climb. 1, 2, 3. Lisa, you said suddenly, turning to face me. I need you to know something. 4, 5. What is it? I asked, though I think I already knew. 6. I've never stopped wondering what if. What if you'd stayed, what if I'd moved to Seattle, what if we'd tried harder? 7. The elevator dinged, and the doors slid open. I stood there, frozen in the moment of decision. Step out, say goodnight, keep the past where it belonged. Or. I pressed the button to close the doors, then reached for the number 9. That was last September. We've seen each other 7 times since then. In Seattle, in New York where you still live, in Chicago once when we both happened to be there for different reasons. We talk on the phone almost every day. We've met each other's children, navigating their confusion and tentative acceptance of this late-in-life reconnection. Next month, you're moving to Seattle. Not for me, you insist, but because you've always loved the Northwest and want to be closer to your younger daughter who's studying at the University of Washington. But I know it's partly for me, just as I know that at 55, I'm too old to waste more time on what-ifs. Yesterday, I was in the garden when you called. The hydrangeas are particularly vibrant this year. I just got the keys to the house, you said, excitement clear in your voice. It's just as good as the pictures. The house you bought is 15 minutes from mine. Close, but not too close. We're taking this slowly, cautiously. We've both lived too much life to rush. I can't wait to see it, I said, touching the edge of a blue hydrangea blossom. And to show you how the garden's changed. I bet the hydrangeas are blooming, you said, and I could hear the smile in your voice. They are, I confirmed. Still the same impossible blue. There was a moment of quiet on the line, comfortable and full of meaning. I'll be there in 3 weeks, you said finally. I'll be here, I replied. I'm not going anywhere this time. And as I stood in my garden, phone pressed to my ear, I felt the weight of old regret finally begin to lift. Not completely. I don't think regret ever disappears entirely, but enough to make room for something new. Something unexpected and precious. They say it's never too late for a second chance. At 55, standing among the blue hydrangeas that have bloomed faithfully for 20 years, I'm starting to believe that might be true.